Citizens of the United States, let us begin with numbers. 400,000 Africans were transported across the Atlantic to what will become the United States. The United States banned the importation of enslaved people in 1808. The slave population grew not by importation, but by natural increase, by the systematic exploitation of the womb. By 1865, there were 4 million enslaved people in the United States. 4 million from natural increase. 4 million born into bondage. 4 million who had no choice, no agency, no future. 4 million who were property. 4 million. The 13th Amendment set them free. They were not given land. They were not given capital. They were not given education. They were set free with a clean slate, no culture, a blank page, and told to write their own future. But the page was not blank. It was already written. It was written in the black codes. It was written in the convict leasing system. It was written in Jim Crow. It was written in the redlining maps. It was written in the wealth gap that persists to this day. The page was not blank. It was a receipt. It was a debt that is still unpaid. A Skinner box is a chamber used to study operant conditioning. A subject is placed in the box. It receives rewards and punishments. It learns to respond to stimuli. It is conditioned to behave in predictable ways. The American system of racial classification is a Skinner box, and it has been operationalized for 4 centuries. The architects of the fiction, Linnaeus, Kant, Blumenbach, Morton, Gobineau, Grant, Stoddard, built the box. The administrators of the system, the OMB, the Census Bureau, the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Justice, maintain the box. The subject is the American mind. The American mind has been conditioned to check a box. It has been conditioned to believe that the box is real. It has been conditioned to believe that the box determines its destiny. It has been conditioned to believe that its neighbor of a different shade is its enemy. The American mind is in a Skinner box, and the fiction of race is the operant conditioning. Laws shape culture. The law said, you are black, you are white, you are Asian, you are Native American, you are Hispanic. The American mind believed. The American mind checked the box. The American mind became the box. The Skinner box rewards compliance with the fiction. It rewards those who accept the categories. It punishes those who question them. The reward is belonging. The punishment is exclusion. The American mind has been conditioned to check the box, not because the box is real, but because the penalty for refusing is isolation. The box is a Skinner box, and the American mind is the subject. There is a narrative that has become orthodoxy in certain circles. It is the narrative of the blanket accusation. The narrative that says all white people are racist. Everything that goes wrong is white people's fault. The entire system is a conspiracy against people of color. This is absurd. It is not absurd because racism does not exist. It does. It is absurd because it is imprecise. It is absurd because it ignores the evidence. It is absurd because it collapses nuance into a caricature. It is absurd because it is a mirror image of the fiction it claims to oppose. The architects of the fiction built a hierarchy. The blanket accusation simply inverts it. The structure remains the same, and it ignores the evidence. The majority of the Union Army was white. They were not fighting for slavery. They were fighting for the Union. They were fighting for the proposition that all men are created equal. They were fighting to end the fiction. 300,000 white soldiers died in the Civil War. They died fighting to end the institution of slavery. They died fighting to fulfill the promise of the Declaration of Independence. They died fighting to prove that America was not just a slave nation. If America was purely racist, there would be no Civil War. There would be only a slave nation. There would be no 13th Amendment. There would be no 14th Amendment. There would be no 15th Amendment. There would be no Civil Rights Act. There would be no Voting Rights Act. There would be no Fair Housing Act. There would be no Amendment 28. The evidence is clear. America has always been a nation in contradiction. The promise was spoken. The system denied it. The fiction was the mechanism of denial. But the promise was never extinguished. The promise was always there, waiting for the evidence to catch up. The blanket accusation is not a solution. It is a distraction. It prevents us from seeing the truth. The system is the problem. The fiction is the problem. The Ponzi scheme is the problem. The Skinner box is the problem. And the Caldwell model is the way out. Let us return to the 4 million. The descendants of the 4 million are not the only people who have been extracted from. They are not the only people who deserve remediation. They are not the only people who have been caught in the Skinner box. But they are a specific harm. And specific harms require specific remedies. It is fair to say that only the direct descendants of the 4 million are due reparations for the specific harm of enslavement. This is not because other harms do not exist. It is because this harm is distinct. It is because this harm was codified in law. It is because this harm was perpetuated through the legal system. It is because this harm was designed to create a hereditary caste system. The government could work aggressively to remediate that specific harm. It could establish a claims commission modeled on the Indians' Claims Commission or the Holocaust reparations programs. It could use documented harm, property records, census records, family trees to identify the descendants of the 4 million. It could provide housing grants, educational scholarships, and capital investment to the descendants of the 4 million. Not because they are black, because they are the descendants of a specific documented harm. This is not begging. This is justice. This is accounting. This is the payment of a debt that has been outstanding for 160 years. The 4 million were born into bondage. They were set free with a clean slate, no culture, a blank page, and told to write their own future. But the page was not blank. It was a receipt, and the receipt is still unpaid. The rural communities of America have been extracted from. The Appalachian counties have been hollowed out. The coal companies took the wealth and left the cost. The timber companies took the trees and left the scars. The pharmaceutical companies took the profits and left the addiction. The people of Appalachia, of all shades of skin, have been caught in the same Skinner box. They have been told that their poverty is their own fault. They have been told that their struggles are a cultural problem. They have been told that their communities are dying because they are not adapting. But the evidence tells a different story. The root cause is extraction, the systematic removal of wealth, opportunity, and hope from rural communities by the corporate interests. The lens of race has been used to divide them from their natural allies, the inner city, the borderlands, the Indian reservations. The Caldwell Model does not forget the rural communities. It invests in all communities, regardless of race. It provides permanent child allowances, universal pre-K, universal health care, geographically targeted investment, school funding equalization, affordable housing, justice reform, and land and capital justice. The Caldwell Model is the fast lane to universal equality and equity. It is not a tax increase. It is a reallocation. It takes the money we're already spending on the fiction and redirects it to what works. It is nearly revenue neutral. It is deflationary. It promotes unity. It demonstrates equality. It demonstrates justice for all. The Caldwell Model is the bridge to justice. It provides permanent child allowance, monthly cash payments to every family with children and household income below 200% of the federal poverty line, reduces poverty, child poverty, by 50% within 12 months. Universal pre-K, free, high-quality early childhood education for 3 and 4-year-olds, reduces school readiness gaps by 50% within a single generation. Universal health care, public option, or single-payer health care for all residents, eliminates the insurance coverage gap within 24 months. Geographically targeted investment, expansion of the CDFI fund to $10 billion annually nationally, directs capital to low-income census tracts, increases small business formation by 15 to 20% within 3 years. School funding equalization redistributes property tax revenue from wealthy districts to poor districts, reduces the achievement gap by 30% within 5 years. Affordable housing grants to public housing authorities, community land trusts, and nonprofit developers, reduces homelessness by 25% within 3 years and 50% within 5 years. Justice reform, reentry programs, legal aid, community-based alternatives to incarceration, reduces incarceration rates by 25% within 3 years and 50% within 5 years. Land and capital justice, grants to community land trusts, legal aid organizations, and former advocacy groups, increases land ownership among families who have been dispossessed. No boxes to check, no questions about identity, just investment in all communities, just opportunity for all Americans. The American mind is a scientific mind. It was born in the age of reason. It was forged in the crucible of the Enlightenment. It was shaped by the conviction that the truth is discovered through observation, tested through experimentation, and validated through evidence. The hypothesis of race is a failed hypothesis. It fails the scientific method. It fails the evidence. It fails the test. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. The American mind must reject the fiction. The American mind must demand the abolition of racial classification. The American mind must demand the end of the Ponzi scheme. The American mind must demand the fulfillment of the promise. The Caldwell Model is the fast lane to universal equality and equity. It is the fulfillment of the American promise. It is the end of the Ponzi scheme. It is the execution order. I was born in 75215. I grew up in 75216. I stood for the flag of the United States of America in Texas. Texas is the birthplace of my patriotism. I have seen the extraction machine operate. I have seen the Skinner box in action. I have been asked to check a box. I have refused. The American mind is a scientific mind. It does not cling to failed hypotheses. It does not defend disproven theories. It does not codify fiction. I have climbed the thermal currents. I have observed the pattern. I have spotted the target. I have folded my wings. I have descended. I have struck. The fiction is exposed. The Ponzi scheme is liquidated. The optical delusion is shattered. The prison is open. The evidence is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. Citizens of the United States, the evidence is clear. The 4 million were born into bondage. They were set free with a clean slate, no culture, a blank page, and told to write their own future. But the page was not blank. It was a receipt, and the receipt is still unpaid. The Skinner box has been operationalized for 4 centuries. The American mind has been conditioned to check a box. It has been conditioned to believe that the box is real. It has been conditioned to believe that the box determines its destiny. The blanket accusation is not a solution. It is a distraction. The majority of the Union Army was white. They fought for the freedom of every man. If America was purely racist, there would be no civil war. There would be only a slave nation. The Caldwell Model is the fast lane to universal equality and equity. It invests in all communities, regardless of race. It provides permanent child allowances, universal pre-K, universal health care, geographically targeted investment, school funding equalization, affordable housing, justice reform, and land and capital justice. The evidence is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. The American mind is a scientific mind. It was born in the age of reason. It was forged in the crucible of the Enlightenment. It is the mind that believes in evidence. It is the mind that dares to think for itself. The hypothesis of race is a failed hypothesis. It fails the scientific method. It fails the evidence. It fails the test. Race does not even make it past the hypothesis test. The American mind must reject the fiction. The American mind must demand the abolition of racial classification. The American mind must demand the end of the Ponzi scheme. The American mind must demand the fulfillment of the promise. I await your verdict.